So, are you living by the reality principle, or are you just bashing yourself against it? It's just so amazing that reality is so evasive. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Reality sometimes just evades us. And it's not because it's not there, it's because we haven't been trained how to look for it, how to address it, how to bring it to the fore, how to elevate it to where it should be so it's visible and present in
And
our.
to have the courage, Michael,
Ooh.
have the courage to actually face it. I think that's a really tough one.
You stopped me in my tracks. because that is a really salient point. Just the whole idea of being brave enough to not only just go there and recognize it, but to face it, to look it in the eye, and to realize that each one of us has this thing, this center, right? Each one of us has a different center, so we're all different. We're all looking at the very same thing. We're looking at a beautiful sunset or a sunrise or a mountaintop, and we're all seeing it differently.
Right.
The reality is so
Yes.
different,
Yes.
and it's based on a whole bunch of things, right? It's based on our perspective. It's based on the things that have happened to us before in our lives. And when we're working in a mastermind group, when we're working with any kind of group, really, but in the context of masterminding that we've developed in our framework here, it is so important to let everyone be.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If you think something, just realize that your thoughts totally different than the other person's thoughts.
Yes. And a lot of this came out of How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Brown. It's a book, Michael, back from I think the 70s. I mean, it's a really, really old book. I actually have 2 copies of it because it's just been so profound in how I look at the world. I go back periodically and look at it again, and you go, how can a book from the 70s? But of course, we have all sorts of books that are, inform us and stand the test of time. But in it, he talks about that there are 2 what he calls identity traps. And the first one is the belief that you should be someone other than yourself. Okay. The second is the assumption that others will do things the way that you would. And so in the first trap, you're forfeiting your freedom by requiring that you live in a stereotype, predetermined way that doesn't consider your own kind of proclivities, your own desires, feelings, and objectives. Right?
Wow.
You're fighting uphill against who you are in your essence, kind of thing, and that you've perhaps chosen identities that don't fit you. We think identity is fixed, that you showed up this way. This is I am who I am, but we do choose, and we've talked about this a lot, the identities that we embody, and that we can change that.
And
Right?
there's so much power in crafting your own identity and being brave enough to challenge yourself to adopt something different, only if you want to, not based on somebody else, right?
Yes, and that's the big trap of it, is that so
right.
often we pick societal ideas or whatever, and you're fighting up a hill against. So how do you have freedom in that case? And here's where the reality comes into it. The reality is you do have certain, a certain personality, a certain interests, certain desires, all those kind of things that kind of are uniquely you. If you're not being honest with yourself, it's the doctor's son that goes and becomes a doctor because, well, that's what dad did, that's what I should be. And then you wake up 40, 50 years later just miserable because you didn't respect the reality of who you are at your core. And of course, this goes into a lot of things that we talk about. You can't know that without some introspection.
Oh yes, and it takes some time. I was just listening to Kent Madsen today from TQ.com.
Okay.
Just revisiting that whole introduction, and I just realized that so many of us for so many years have gone through life without this clear idea of who we are and what we actually want to extract from life. And it's the identity that drives us. The identity is the thing that actually, once we establish direction, is the thing that motivates us. It's the thing that identity actually makes us do the things that,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
and so to be able to say, look, this is what I want to extract from life, and the reality now to face it. And this is one of the real powerful questions: who does that thing that you want to do?
Right.
Who becomes that person that you want to become? And then you design yourself that way, so that you get the full 100% plus satisfaction and fulfillment out of every single, you like to say juicy, right? Somewhere in
Yes.
there.
Juicy
Your
life. Yes.
juicy life, so that every single day is succulent and
Yes.
productive, every
Yes.
single day. And so,
Engaging and passionately involved in
uh,
it. Yes.
and so reaching clearly defined outcomes necessitates the use of a reality principle. What do
Yes.
you say to that, Lady Renee?
If you don't know what that is, if you're not honest with yourself about that, if you don't examine that, you're fighting that. If you're trying to be the doctor that wants to be a humanitarian, in a different way, or wants to be a veterinarian, or wants to go dig ditches or anything,
Mhm.
you're fighting that all the time if you don't take the time to deal with the reality of who you are. These things all kind of, you and I've come up with this week in and week out as we're talking about these different subjects. They all kind of inform each other as you're going, a vision that you have for yourself is not going to be compelling to you if it's just not kind of who you are.
Mm.
Right. And
Mhm.
so the same thing with your values. They're not something, they speak to you or they don't speak to you. And I can't say where those come from. That is a question for all the years you and I've talked. I have never been able to. We call it God's fingerprint. It's
Yeah.
just something in you that draws you to loving Pez dispensers if you're the creator of eBay,
Mhm.
or that you're fascinated by teaching reading, finances, the fundamentals of life. For me, you're not interested in going riding a motorcycle to the bottom of South America or anything else.
Mhm.
Why? I took my motorcycle out this afternoon and was spun around the neighborhood, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just over the moon. And I couldn't tell you where that comes from. But who cares? If you fight against that speaks to you for whatever crazy reason that it does,
Mhm.
you're ignoring the reality of who you are. And then all these things intersect: the identity that does the things, the vision and vision that you have for
Mhm.
yourself, that's an
Mhm.
expression of that, the values that support that, they all kind of inform one another. But being realistic about, looking that square in the eye and saying, this is what I care about. I know my sister, she went into geology because my parents thought it would be a great idea. Years later, she was still wanting to be a physical therapist.
Mm.
Because, and so that's an example of just completely ignoring the reality of what speaks to you, and
Wow.
and wasting decades of your life, wasting the gift of your life,
Mhm.
wasting the gifts that if you would embrace the reality of what matters to you, whatever that is, you're
Wow.
wasting all that time on, putting your ladder, as they say, against the wrong wall. You're
Mhm.
climbing a ladder to an unfulfilling future, and then you're not actually engaged with it. You're not then that's not you're not sharing the thing that really
Mhm.
is the thing that makes you so valuable and important to other people. For you, the health thing,
Mhm.
that you cured, I'm not allowed to say the C word, that you no longer have diabetes that any
Mhm.
doctor can find.
Right.
um, and to
Right.
share that with others. You went through that experience.
Mhm.
You did something about it. You're passionate about what you discovered.
Mhm.
Even that pain point is now a gift that you give to other people. And because you're passionate about it, you keep at it day after day, year after year,
And even
learning,
there,
sharing. Hmm.
absolutely. I mean, even there in that whole process is an identity, because,
Yes.
right? Because the choices I made were based on how I saw myself,
Yes.
and the reality of who I am and who I claim to be. And I am someone that should not be sick.
Right.
And I should not have to take drugs or medication or pharmaceuticals to get better. I should be
Yes.
able to find a way through lifestyle, through habits of living, to be able to reverse any complaint that I have. And but that's who I choose to be,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And a worldview that you have for yourself and
Absolutely.
values that are embedded in it.
Oh,
And
it
then a vision came from that. I'm not doing that. I'm going to go a different path and see where I get and
yeah,
look at the outcome
yeah.
because you were driven. It spoke to you. You were driven to do it. All those things came together
That is
and look
so
at the outcome. And now it is your gift to share.
yes,
You
yeah.
know, the people that come to you saying, how did you do that? You have a book, you know, that speaks
Mhm.
to that in the process that you used to do that. That's your gift because you lived through it and you were passionate about it and you
Mhm.
didn't go trying to chase something else. I always laugh. We started out our mastermind is calling it the Billionaires Club. And it was so unvalues based for both of us. The money is just, you know, a means to an end kind of
Right,
thing for both of us.
right.
And you went chasing for a few minutes. Fortunately, we pivoted,
Yeah.
but it doesn't sustain you if you're not being honest with yourself, if you're not looking at the reality of who you are, what matters to you. You're chasing the wrong things, and
Right.
it's a shame because it is a lost gift to all the people around you.
That's so right, so right. And one of the things that I want to be sure that we address, because in the context of working in a group, in the context of learning from each other in a group, in a context of being supportive of each other in a group, all right, we must allow the other person to be and to live within their own reality, and to accept that that is the reality that they have. My wife loves to have an extremely clean kitchen and a clean house all the time. I mean, she will literally be walking by and would be picking things up, or have a broom in one hand and dusting in the other, and and it's just the thing that she's so passionate about. And I will actually, just for convenience, I will drop something here knowing that I'm going to come back in 5 minutes, and in 5 minutes it'll be gone. Now I have some choices here. I could fuss, I could get angry, but I say, you know what? She's living in a reality that's a little bit different than mine. Her pace of, cleaning up is totally different. And so, and then even if it's upsetting to me, one of the statements that we have in our mastermind of excellence framework is that we must distinguish between the human and the behavior of that
Yeah.
human, and
Yes.
give value to the human, and many times ignoring the behavior. How easy is that to do?
I think having this distinction
Yes.
helps tremendously because, you know, and this goes to, not too many people have heard of Morty Lefko, but
Mm,
just a brilliant man. He's been gone for a few years now, but just brilliant in how he. I took a couple of classes from him, and making this distinction where you really viscerally get that you you see it first for yourself, and then of course you can port this over to other people, is that as you went through life, things happened to you, you
mhm,
made conclusions about them
mhm,
based on the information that you had at hand,
mhm,
and that given where you were at that point in life, the conclusions you made based on, you know, all of us have or not impartial, incomplete information. We make conclusions, and those conclusions are fairly rational. Most people you deal with do not have an emotion, a true clinical, kind of problem,
mhm.
which we act sometimes like people do when they don't see things the way that we do. But the fact of the matter is most people, and I watch this all the time. I mean, it's so in my awareness now. that everybody is doing things based on those conclusions that reached at an, from earlier, and most things are earlier in your life, that you make conclusions that are fairly reasonable, fairly intelligent, logical conclusions based on the information you had at the time. Some of these were informed when you were young. Most of them, a lot of them were formed that plague us when we were young. And so, you had very incomplete information then. I'm not too bright. The teacher that hassled me when I was in the first grade, I choked for a minute. What's the opposite of go? Stop. And I choked in front of the whole class, and she made me write the opposite of go is stop over and over on the chalkboard in front of everybody. Well, that's just mean, but the conclusion is maybe, maybe I choke under pressure. I was in the first grade, but you tend to bring all these things forward with you through life. You don't re-examine them. And so just like you do this, so do other people. They've come to conclusions. They're behaving in a way that's consistent with those conclusions, that were rational, that protected them, that allowed them to function in different ways in the world. Well, when you have that distinction, all of a sudden you can at least go, what's going on behind this? What's possibly what the person is thinking about? What is it that you think about that is incomplete, based on incomplete information? And so trying to look at, parse out, your way of thinking so that it is more reality based. That was, I was what, 7 years old, 8 years old, I don't know, when you maybe formed an opinion like that of yourself.
Right.
So to be able to look at other people and to yourself with a little more compassion, actually, that they're doing the best they can, you're doing the best that you can.
That is so.
And then when you can step back from that and be a little more just the observer of that, instead of ego, then we tend to protect ourselves. Instead of having that ego involvement, you can step back and, have compassion for the little 7, 8-year-old that was mortified to stand in front of the whole class and, write stop 100 times, and go, okay, you don't have to protect that, but maybe we should upgrade the operating system. Maybe we should upgrade the thoughts about yourself for the 56-year-old that I am, right? And so,
and so giving ourselves value, and then questioning the moments when we pull back, when we feel inadequate, and we feel challenged, and maybe a little bit of shame in that, right? And when we feel those things, we need to go back and ask the question, what is the reality
of this?
Am I
absolutely? Because these all are, they all hamper your freedom. All of them. You're trapped in I'm not too bright, or I don't get things, or I choke under pressure, or any of these things. And they've run into our operating system, Michael, for decades so often. We don't even question them. It's like not seeing, I don't know, your paint color on your walls. You just stop seeing it anymore.
Yes.
Because you're saying these things in your mind just continuously. You're operating as if that's true. And how does that work for you? Where does it keep you from having other options in your life if you're stuck thinking and rethinking those same dysfunctional, thoughts for yourself?
So it's coming to grips then with the reality that we have issues. That's a reality.
And I don't know anybody who doesn't.
All right. And we're talking here about strategies. In this case, the reality principle. And to ask the important question. So what is the reality here? And Morty Lefko really does a great job of getting one to uncover how one's beliefs and interpretation are really impacting our viewpoint and impacting how we behave as a result. And so to question what is the reality here? Am I truly inadequate? Am I not so bright after all?
Yes.
is this challenge really too big for me? Because someone
Mm,
said you'll never get to the top of Mount Everest.
right.
Is it really too big for you? Is it something that you really want to do? And to ask those important questions, not just to hide them, not just to keep them to yourself, but to even say them out loud if you want to, in front of a mirror, would be even a
Right.
good start. Am I really that? Or is there
Mm,
something different? And I love this 180-degree flip. What if I believed the exact opposite of what I believe?
right.
What if I were to believe the exact opposite, that I am brilliant?
How am I bright? How do I step up to the plate?
Yeah,
How do I,
yeah, ex-
right? How do I not shrink back? How have I not shrank back in my life? How have I gone for it? How have I been strong? How have I faced embarrassment and still continued forward? All
eh,
of those things. I think that's a beautiful strategy, Michael.
yeah. Ask those important questions. I remember the day, and I know we've mentioned this before, but I played this organ. The lady invited me up to play the organ, and I think it was a funeral or some big event in my home country. And I went up, I played, and I know I shouldn't have. I made a fool of myself in that organ. Even though I knew how to play, it was just a very unfamiliar piece. It was just something, and I mean, I was literally embarrassed, but I never let that frame my whole life. There were maybe a few months, but I had to overcome that. And
Yes.
so I ultimately played in public for several years after that. But I had to come to grips with the fact that the reality would could not my reality was not defined by that one event where I
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed myself. I stepped out.
Yeah.
In fact, my personality is one to take those kinds of risks. Yeah, and some of us are made that way,
Yeah.
right? That we would step out, not being totally prepared, but stepping out and see what happens.
Yes.
And that can be a very, very productive, very profitable characteristic. To take chances. Calculated risks, of course, are much
Mhm.
better, right? But
Mm.
to have that framework behind you and to recognize that that is who you are.
Yes.
Oh man,
Yes. And
gives you
I love the 180 flip on the question, Michael, because that gets your reticular activating system in play. Because your mind, we talk about good questions, asking good questions, ones that will actually provide a functional, productive response, because your brain, the reticular activating system, will look for an answer to whatever question you ask. Why am I so stupid? I always say that one. Why am I so stupid? Or what are the places I have pushed myself? And your
Mm,
mind will come up with answers to either one of them, but one will actually be productive for you to answer the question of how have I stepped out in the past. Your mind will go, oh, hey, there was that one time, and then there was this other time, and then
mm,
all of a sudden you're finding evidence in your own experience for the opposite of what you've been telling yourself.
mm. So we can get that little inner voice, the one that with the negative thoughts, the one that's holding us back, the one that's keeping us away from being truly living our potential, that little inner voice, that particular one, we can actually reprogram that, right?
Right,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And
Absolutely.
I do want to also make a distinction here because, as we look at ourselves, that's one thing. But as we look at others, and that we can actually come about this statement that says, I love you, I just don't love your behavior.
This particular behavior.
This particular behavior. Yes, exactly. And so we're not going to in any way like everything about everybody. All
Right.
right. I mean, everybody has something that's going to rub us the wrong way because of something the way they say it, the thing they do. I mean, it could be as simple as the traditional husband and wife argument about the toothpaste tube,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Squeeze it from the end, from the middle.
Right. It could be as simple as that.
Yes.
But we don't have to let the behavior change the dynamic within the relationship. Yes, it
Yes.
could be a little irritating, but that's that person. That's how they grew up. That's the way they see the world. They behave, and I love the three laws of performance, because basically they say the way people behave is the way, because of how things occur to them,
Yes.
about how they see it, right? And
Right.
so
How they
they
perceive it. Yes.
precisely so. And so to be able to recognize that there is a reality, that that person has some kind of different experience, different exposure, different desire, different framework for living,
Different
and
priorities.
different priority, we can
Yes.
still say, I accept you. That particular behavior, that bothers me. But you know what? In spite of that, I still love you. I still like,
Appreciate the
appreciate
human.
exactly the human behind that behavior. And
Absolutely.
so masterminding is an art form,
Yeah.
all right? And it's not hard. It's just that we're bringing out in these sessions some of the key things that have made our mastermind program work for us, the mastermind
Yes.
framework. This has been huge for us.
Yes.
And to extend that, I mean, I'm even so much aware of this now that, if I'm driving down the highway and I see a car that's a little more rusty than mine, you know, uh, sometimes I take a look and it says, oh, wow, that guy, you know, but I catch myself right there. Real quick,
Yes.
right?
Yes. In your judgment.
Yes, I catch myself
Yes.
really quickly because I'm very much aware. Wait a minute, it's not about the car. It's not about the rust. That guy could be a millionaire choosing to drive that rusty,
Right. You have no idea. And we
right?
jump to conclusions so very quickly. And you
Right.
have no idea all of the choices and all the hardships and challenges and anything that all of us are facing. I love that. Have you heard that story, Michael, of the guy gets on the subway? I can't remember where I read it from. The guy gets on the subway and he's two or three kids and they're acting
Right.
like just complete animals and bouncing off of people, and he's just sitting there and letting them run like wild.
Mm-hmm.
And then come to find out they just left the hospital and his wife and their mother just passed away. It
That's
changes the whole perspective.
that's
And
right.
how often do we know what's going on with that?
That's
How
right.
often do we know what's going on with people?
That's right. That's right.
And
And
we
so
want to have a measure of people accepting us, but yet we won't give people that benefit of the doubt of, I have no idea what's going on there, but that they are living consistent with whatever's going on with them, their beliefs, the way they view the world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
Stephen Covey made that story very popular in talking about the paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And I just know that it's just so important for us, especially in our mastermind group, and over the many years, we've had the exposure and the need, and we felt the need to really take a look at trying first to understand
Yes.
before trying to be understood,
And we
right?
all have those snap moments, Michael.
Yeah,
I always want to make sure as we talk every week during these things, you and I have made great strides, but we're still human. We still, I'll catch myself in those same snap judgments and irritations and frustrations like everybody else. So
yep.
in no way do we have this nailed. We're just always striving for, because that's the value, right?
It's
That's the value.
the value, absolutely, and to be aware that these are important what features, important levels of awareness.
Principles, yes,
Principles, yeah, that,
absolutely.
that is so important for longevity in building the kind of relationship that works for a long time, where you can truly then be supportive of each other.
And
Because,
trust,
oh, it's
the
so huge.
trust that it builds, because you can be vulnerable. You can say, this is who I am and this is what I'm struggling with, and I
Mhm.
need help. And I probably will be back here again with it. There's certain things that I go, oh my gosh, Michael's heard this so many times. I'm mortified. One of these, but then you have the space to keep trying to become that person that you're trying to become, instead of hiding from it, which again is looking at reality. I struggle with this one. Why? I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm
Mhm.
going to keep trying, and I've got a place that's supportive where I can tell the truth. I struggle with, I have a sweet tooth like nobody's business. Michael eats nothing but clean and lovely. And I laugh when he tells me when he was bad, because it's not bad at all. And I go, gosh, I'm still struggling with the same things, and so you have a place where you can keep, you poke at it, you improve it by 5%. Well, that matters over time. You keep improving and keep improving, you will get where you want to go.
Man, that is so right. And so the reality principle, right? The reality principle has two sides to it then. It has the side where we recognize who we are based on our abilities and our skills, our gifts, and we accept the limitations that we might have, and whatever that reality is, not just what's in our head, but what it truly is, right? By
Yes.
asking the important question, and maybe, like you said earlier, just taking that 180-degree flip and saying, what if I believed something totally different? Would that, in fact, help to change my reality, or would it reveal something different than I was thinking before? Whatever the answer is, doesn't matter, because now you have more options as a result of being able to ask those questions and get those kinds of answers. So that's one side, about you yourself. The second one is about other people and being able to accept them right where they are for whatever it is that's going on in their life. And I really like the question. I can't remember the author right now, but what if you were to assume that everybody was doing the best they could?
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Wouldn't that be so different in
Yes.
reality?
Yes.
So you would see you see them struggling. Man, guy's really doing well. He's doing his absolute best.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
It changes everything about how you approach people then. And I think, there's also, and I don't want to skip this part of it, Michael,
Yes.
is that in dealing with both yourself and other people, when you can look at the truth of the matter, when you see, I always say people are showing you who they are. I fall into the hole of people can say what they want to say, but they're showing you who they are, is to be acutely aware of that. And for you to achieve the things you want to achieve, you have to be aware of not only the positives, but the limitations of yourself and others. You can, in your own case, you can strengthen those weaknesses and improve yourself. When dealing with other people, you don't have that control over them. And so you have to look at people very as objectively as you humanly can, observing how they are behaving consistently through time, so that you mesh your objectives with the right people to get where you want to go in life, and to be, of course, of service to other people in your world, so that you don't miss the essential nature of someone. So someone who's not good with finances is not the person you want to go to discuss your finances with. Right. But I have a very Pollyanna nature. And so this is where we made that distinction, or at least I did for myself, was I want to see the best in people, the humanity in people, that we're all striving to do our best. But you also have to be cognizant of the abilities of those same people, to not get yourself aligned with the wrong people for your objectives, because then you lose freedom.
Yes.
You're not free. I aligned myself with a less than productive property manager, and we suffered terribly financially because of that. And so I was looking at the humanity of the person. I wasn't looking at the reality of what I was seeing all the time. And so this is very key too. We can change the things in ourselves. We have the volition, if we choose to, we may struggle, but we have the volition to change the things in ourselves, but we don't with the other people that we work with, because we're all in relationships getting things done, marital relationships, business relationships, school, education, friendships, the person that consistently shows up late for your lunch date, you better be aware of it. And then you can choose how you want to act with that. If that's too much of a problem for you, then maybe the friendship goes. If maybe you frame it for, that's just who she is, and I love her anyway. And she brings so much light to my life. I don't care that she's 10 minutes late. you have to deal with the reality of who you're dealing with. You know, we're all pretty consistent in our personality. And so be aware of that so that you align yourself with the right people to get the right things done
Yes,
for your mission in life.
absolutely. And I think it's worth it to read the statement right here out of our Masterminds of Excellence framework. It says, you must give the largest weight to observable behaviors over the words someone speaks in interacting with any given individual.
Yes.
And so we want the human, right? I mean, the human,
Yes.
you want to give up their humanity to them. But we also want to use that reality principle to look at
Yes.
behavior. And
Yes.
because that informs how we should respond more so
Yes.
than what they say, but by
Yes.
actually what they're doing and how,
Yes.
but and like you said, consistently doing.
Yes.
There's a pattern here. And
Yes.
without judgment, we can
Yes.
still love them, but we
Yes.
can determine how deep we want to go into that
Yes.
relationship.
Michael, I always say, you know, I don't, so a weather phenomenon, you know, with a hurricane or a tornado, you don't fight its nature. You just get out of the way of it. Correct?
Correct.
You don't stand in front of tsunami and say you shouldn't be this way. You get out of its way. And so there's some people that come across our lives, some personalities, some behaviors that come across our awareness, and you have to deal with it. You know, you don't go and pet the lion. You know, so there's certain behaviors that will cause you pain or harm. And if you're not aware of those and you don't treat them appropriately, if you don't parse out the humanity of a human being from behaviors that they do, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble if you don't identify that and you don't look at the reality of what someone is showing you. And then include your own self.
Yeah.
I don't exclude your own self from that, because if you won't look at your own, you know, we all are fallible. We all do things that cause ourselves harm in various ways. And there's always that inkling, it's like me, the sugar is not good for me, and I don't have any obvious health issues. And so you kind of, you shove it out of your awareness. Whereas the reality of it, you look at it and you go, okay, if I'm pre-diabetic, turns into diabetic, now I'm risking limbs and longevity and a million other things. Is this how you want to live your life? And if you keep ducking the reality of that, I always say gravity takes effect. You can argue it all day long, but you step off the edge, it's going to win.
Wow.
You can ignore reality, but it will win.
So there's freedom in identity. By having a clear identity based on the reality principle, we can find freedom.
Yes.
And the reason why is it that the title here is an unfree world? Is it because there are so many people that just don't use this reality principle?
From the standpoint of the book, it's that there's always people and entities in that, and then circumstances that do exert influence over your life. And how do you maintain or exert, I guess, the most freedom over your own life, your own choices, your own decisions. And a lot of it has to do with these two things. Everything in the book is kind of an outflow of the different ways that we ignore that we have a certain identity, we have a certain personality, a certain proclivities, desires, preferences, all those kind of things, and so do other people, and that we see the world differently. And how do you maintain freedom is through looking at things with a very clear eye, not a wishful thinking. And like I said, I'm very Pollyanna. So for me, this is a really big struggle, because I want to see the best in everything, the positive in everything. And really, like I said, gravity will take its effect. If you want to ignore it, it's truly at your own peril, because there's certain rules of the universe that they will win. And if you play with, you see people do this all the time on videos on YouTube. The guy that goes out and lives with the grizzly bears, and he doesn't have reality on his side. He's not, this is a wild animal. It has a certain nature to it. And, they're the best of friends until he gets eaten, and it's like, and then, oh my gosh, it's like, there should be no surprise in that. You are not dealing with reality if you think that you have a human kind of relationship with a grizzly bear. It makes but where we get caught up is when we do it in subtler things. That's pretty obvious to most of us. Don't crawl in the lion's cage, don't go play with grizzly bears. Don't walk off the edge without, appropriate flight equipment. Those ones are obvious, but where we hang ourselves up is the things that we can duck from, right? Wow. Me with a sugar habit, a bad sugar habit. You can go, I don't see it today. I don't see it tomorrow. I don't see, the extra 5 pounds, I can hide them. But you're ducking the seriousness of what you're up to.
Wow.
And we all do it. Every last one of us do it in some area of our lives. I am not exempt, and neither are you and anybody else. We all do it.
Yeah, I hope that the reality principle has awakened some level of increased distinction.
Yes.
Right? The two sides, the reality that we see, the reality that others see, and also the patterns of behavior, more important than the words, so we know how to respond and how involved we wish to be with those around us. And the distinction, right? To give a person their humanity is important, but while at the same time being aware of their behavior. And Ronald Reagan, trust but verify, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a favorite quote of mine.
Trust but verify.
Because at the end of the day, nobody this, winds around to responsibility. At the end of the day, you can try to push and shove everybody else around you to do what's best for you, but really, you're at the epicenter of impact. You're the one who has the most impact over the outcomes in your life. And so you take that responsibility, you look at life through a lens of, truth, as in objective. And he defines this in the book. Truth is, you need enough truth in order to deal with things as they are and get predictable results from them. We never have 100% lock on, beat on the truth, kind of thing, because it's always incomplete. We can find the best, the best like model for something, but we always know that it's incomplete.
Yes.
But is it the facsimile to the truth? Is it close enough that you can get predictable results? You keep putting the same inputs in, you keep getting the same predictable results 95% of the time, then it's close enough. It's close enough to get you your outcome. You go walk off the side of the cliff without anything, it's a 0%, survival rate. That's a poor approximation of the truth.
Wow.
So it's on a spectrum. Does it work for you? Does it get you predictable results, the majority of the time? And then that's where distinctions come in. You can always be looking for those continued distinctions to go, what happens in those other 5% of the time that I'm not getting? Why is there sometimes this is not predictable for me, but it is the vast majority of the time? You can look at those things. And so it's always an introspective process, right?
It's totally introspective, but reaching clearly defined outcomes is our first statement here.
Right. In service of the outcome, right?
Yeah, yes. Necessitates the use of a reality principle.
I love it.
Yeah, I just want to be sure that as you step out there from our audience and you step out there building new relationships and forming mastermind groups and getting your personal board of directors together, that you totally examine this reality principle as part of your plan, so that you can address the needs of all members in the group, and that you can be aware and helpful and supportive optimally, without having to have the uncomfortable moments.
This has been a beautiful revisit, Michael. It's
Yeah,
been a long time since we've discussed this, and I really, really appreciate this review.
it's been phenomenal. And I do want to just encourage anyone to reach out to us if you have questions. Michael, Dale, Campbell, and thank you for those who reached out last few days. Just whether to a friend request or send a question by messenger. Same thing for Renee, Troutman, Maxfield. Just reach out to us with a question. Let us know if there's something that we can help you with, any questions you'd like to get answered. We are here really genuinely to help you optimize your own life, to be able to make those choices and to design the results, the outcomes that you want based on these key principles that have made us so successful in our group. So I want to thank you all for being here. Renee, any closing comments?
No,
Oh, yeah.
that was beautiful. I
Yeah.
don't know what we're talking about next week either.
Yeah. We've got some ground rules.
It's always a surprise.
Yeah. Some ground rules here. But I do want to wish everyone a fabulous, successful, and what a happy new year.
And go get it. Go
And
get it. Whatever the it is, go
whatever
after
it is.
it with a vengeance. No New Year's Eve resolutions. Go make it your life.
Yes, exactly. I'm doing another presentation on the unresolution.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah.
So
So,
please join us next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back with something else.
all right. Good week.